The rise and fall of Pablo Escobar, the boy from Medellín. Hit that subscribe button before this story disappears like the fortune of the world's most feared man. The streets of Medellín never slept. In the humid Colombian night of 1979, the sound of engines roaring through narrow alleys meant one thing: another shipment was on the move. In the driver's seat of a mud-splattered truck sat Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, his dark eyes fixed on the winding road ahead. At that moment he wasn't the drug lord history would remember. He was a young man chasing a dream carved from poverty, ambition, and blood. Born in Rio Negro and raised in Medellín, Pablo grew up in a world where wealth wasn't inherited, it was taken. His mother was a schoolteacher, his father a farmer. But Escobar wanted more than a simple life. From stealing tombstones to resell to smuggling stolen cars, he quickly learned that crime wasn't just survival, it was opportunity. By his early 20s he'd built a network of hustlers, corrupt cops, and loyal enforcers. But his ambition was far greater than petty theft. The 1970s were the dawn of the cocaine era. Across the Americas, a white powder began flooding parties, clubs, and boardrooms. In that chaos, Escobar saw his empire's blueprint. Working with small-time chemists and smugglers, he began exporting cocaine to Miami hidden inside airplane tires, dolls, and fruit crates. The profits were unimaginable. Every kilo smuggled turned into thousands of US dollars. And Escobar wasn't just moving kilos, he was moving tons. Within years the Medellín cartel was born. It operated like a military: strict loyalty, swift punishment, and no mercy for betrayal. Escobar became El Patron, the boss. To the poor he was a saint, building houses, schools, and soccer fields. To the government he was a monster responsible for the bloodiest wave of violence Colombia had ever seen. By 1982, Escobar was no longer just a drug trafficker, he was a politician. He bought his way into Congress, shaking hands with men who pretended not to smell the cocaine dust clinging to his suit. Cameras captured him smiling, his charm disarming, his confidence chilling. He even offered to pay off Colombia's entire national debt, a gesture that terrified world leaders more than it impressed them. But behind the charisma was a storm brewing. Rival cartels, jealous allies, and foreign governments were closing in. The DA had marked Medellín as ground zero in their war on drugs. One humid night in 1984, a convoy of black cars rolled down a quiet street in Bogotá. Inside one of them sat Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, Colombia's Minister of Justice, a man who had dared to call out Escobar publicly. Moments later, motorcycles sped up beside the car, and the night exploded in gunfire. When the smoke cleared, Lara was dead. That assassination changed everything. The government declared war on Escobar. The DA arrived in force. Allies turned on each other. Money no longer bought silence, it bought targets. Still, Escobar remained untouchable, his power unmatched. From his lavish estate, Hacienda Napoles, complete with its own zoo, airstrip, and artificial lakes, he controlled 80% of the world's cocaine trade. He was richer than most nations, deadlier than any army. His men smuggled billions through the US, Europe, and beyond. But power breeds paranoia. Every smile hid a spy. Every handshake carried a threat. Inside his empire, whispers of betrayal began to spread. Even Escobar's most loyal lieutenants started to question whether El Patron had become too big to protect. And then came the moment that changed the world. A secret meeting, deep in the Medellín mountains. A plan whispered in the dark: if Pablo falls, we all survive. But when Escobar's most trusted man didn't return from that meeting, when they opened the trunk of his bullet-riddled car the next morning, Escobar knew what he had to do. He declared war not just on the government, but on anyone who had ever doubted him. And what followed would turn Medellín into the most dangerous city on earth. The empire of blood and fear. The sun rose over Medellín like a bruise, purple, gray, and heavy with smoke. The war had begun. Within weeks of Minister Lara's assassination, the city transformed from a booming paradise into a battlefield. Escobar's enemies fell one by one, and the message was clear: loyalty or death. Police chiefs were ambushed in traffic. Journalists who dared to print his name were hunted in broad daylight. Judges, mayors, and senators, all became targets in Escobar's silent war. But beneath the chaos was order, his order. Every act of violence was calculated, every explosion a warning. To the poor neighborhoods that adored him, Escobar remained El Patron, the man who gave them food, homes, and money. But to the government and law enforcement, he was the invisible hand of terror, shaping the fate of an entire nation. At the height of his power, Pablo Escobar's wealth was unthinkable. Forbes magazine listed him among the richest men in the world. His fortune was so vast that rats ate nearly $2 billion in stored cash each year, hidden in barns, holes and walls across Colombia. His cartel moved cocaine through submarines, private jets, and even inside the tires of commercial planes. He bribed air traffic controllers, customs officials and pilots. The Medellín cartel became a shadow government, its money flowing through banks and businesses from Miami to Madrid. But behind every empire lies fear. Escobar trusted no one. He began using radio intercepts to monitor his own men. His mother's house was bugged. His wife, Maria Victoria, lived under constant surveillance even during meals. His obsession with control became suffocating. Those who questioned his orders vanished, their bodies later found in rivers or shallow graves. Yet despite the bloodshed, Escobar believed he could outsmart the world. In 1991, after years of failed negotiations, he offered to surrender to Colombian authorities, on one condition: he would build his own prison. The government agreed, desperate to end the violence. Thus, La Catedral was born, a luxurious fortress high in the mountains overlooking Medellín. Complete with a soccer field, waterfall, jacuzzi, and a private bar, it was less a prison and more a palace. Inside, Escobar ran his empire freely. Drugs, money, and orders still flowed out from La Catedral's walls. For a while, peace returned. Bombings slowed. The streets quieted. The world believed the kingpin had been caged. But Escobar was never one to be contained. When two of his lieutenants were brought to La Catedral for questioning, men suspected of skimming profits, they were found dead hours later. Tortured. Executed. Word spread fast. That was the breaking point. The Colombian government, humiliated and pressured by the United States, announced plans to move Escobar to a real prison. But Pablo already knew. On the night of July 22, 1992, a heavy fog rolled over the mountains. Guards loyal to Escobar vanished. By dawn, when officials arrived to transfer him, the cell was empty. The world's most wanted man had disappeared into thin air. The manhunt that followed became legend. Over 600 agents, both Colombian police and USDA, flooded Medellín. Every phone call was traced, every lead followed. But Escobar knew his city, every tunnel, every safe house, every ally. The once golden streets he built now became his battlefield. Outside, his empire crumbled. Rivals in the Cali cartel struck deals with U.S. agents, feeding them information. His allies defected for safety. His money hidden in the ground was running out. The walls were closing in. Then one evening, as Escobar hid in a modest apartment with his family, his 9-year-old son asked him, "Papa, are we still rich?" Escobar smiled weakly and handed the boy a handful of burning cash, using it to keep them warm through the cold night. The king of cocaine, once worth billions, was now burning his fortune just to survive. Still, he refused to surrender. He told his wife, "They will never take me alive." Outside, his enemies were closing in. Every phone call, every whisper, every move brought him closer to the end. And soon one single call, would betray him. The fall of the king. The walls of Medellín had gone silent. The streets once ruled by Escobar's men were now patrolled by soldiers, DA agents and rival hit squads. The empire he built on fear was collapsing, one betrayal at a time. For 16 months after his escape from La Catedral, Pablo Escobar lived like a ghost. He moved between safe houses, changing locations every night. His once loyal sicarios, the hitmen who'd once killed for him without hesitation, were now hunted themselves. The Medellín cartel was no longer a family. It was a graveyard. The United States had poured millions into a special task force called Search Block, a joint Colombian U.S. operation led by men who had one mission: find Escobar dead or alive. They tapped his phones, tracked his couriers, and raided hundreds of hideouts. But Escobar was a master of the invisible. Every time they got close, he slipped through the cracks, a shadow in his own city. Still, paranoia was eating him alive. His beard had gone gray. His eyes were bloodshot. He rarely slept. He trusted no one except his mother, his wife, and his children, and even they lived like fugitives, moving from safe house to safe house under fake names. By December 1993, Escobar's world had shrunk to a handful of blocks in a poor Medellín neighborhood called Los Olivos. He still had a phone, his one fatal mistake. Each day he called his family to make sure they were safe. Those calls became his only link to the outside world, and the only threat investigators needed. The DA had already triangulated the area, narrowing his location with every call. And then, on December 2, 1993, he made one last phone call. Te amo mama, he said softly. I love you too, Pablo, she replied. That was all. But it was enough. Within minutes, a signal fix appeared on the search block radar. They closed in fast. Trucks screeched to a halt. Soldiers fanned out across the rooftops. Helicopters thundered above. Inside the two-story house, Escobar was eating a sandwich and talking to his cousin, Alvaro de Jesus Agudelo. He looked out the window and saw soldiers flooding the street. His instinct took over, the same reflex that had kept him alive for decades. He grabbed his pistol and an M16 and ran to the roof. Gunfire erupted. Bullets ripped through the walls. Neighbors screamed. Escobar fired wildly, darting between chimneys and antennas. The soldiers returned fire. He was cornered. A bullet tore through his leg. Another grazed his side. Still he kept running, across the rooftops, clutching his gun, refusing to surrender. Then one shot hit him just behind the ear. The king of cocaine fell face down on the red-tiled roof, his pistol still in his hand. The soldiers surrounded the body. For a moment no one spoke. The war that had consumed Colombia for over a decade was over in seconds. When word broke that Escobar was dead, the streets of Medellín exploded, some in celebration, others in tears. For the rich and powerful, it was the end of terror. For the poor, it was the death of a man they called Robin Hood. His mother wept. His enemies rejoiced. The government declared victory. But for Colombia the scars would last forever. And as rain began to fall on the rooftops of Los Olivos, a soldier pulled out a camera and snapped a photo of Escobar's lifeless body, a smile frozen on his face. It became one of the most haunting images in modern history, the fall of a man who once ruled the world from the shadows. A man who believed he could buy heaven with blood and money. A man who learned too late that even kings can't escape fate.